Special thanks to these companies for being long-term partners of this channel.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Zach. Here we talk about overlanding and gear, builds, DIY, all sorts of awesome projects related to overlanding. Now today is kind of a project and it's also kind of a review. We're going to be talking about tires and in specific kind of comparing mud terrains versus all terrains. So if you saw my recent video about tires, I talked about how I picked up a set of Geolander MT003s. Now, I think that they were amazing tires, but I've decided to try out another tire just so that I can get another perspective and try out some different products to kind of report back to all of you. So if you like content like this or you like what I'm doing with the channel, consider subscribing and turn on that notification bell so you know when I actually post new videos. And give the video a like if you like this sort of content or you like this video in particular and it brought you some sort of value. So with that being said, let's jump right into talking about tires, and then I want to show you something that I'm changing on my rims, or as you all like to correct me on, actually my wheels. So let's jump right in. All right, so like I said, I ended up switching out my tires for these Falken Wildpeak AT3Ws, and these are an all-terrain tire, whereas my previous ones were a mud terrain tire. Now, the reason that I decided to switch to these was, a couple of reasons. One, these have a load C wall, so I just wanted to test using a load C because a lot of people have been commenting, why do you use load C versus load E? Is load E better? Is load E way better than load C? All these different reasons. So I wanted to kind of test the ride difference as well as, we'll try these out on the trail and we'll just kind of see how they perform. I'm really curious to see if there's any sort of big difference between load C and load E from just an anecdotal sort of perspective. I also wanted to try these out because they have a lot more siping than my mud terrain tires. And a lot of people like to talk about how mud terrain tires are bad in the snow. And so that's what I want to talk about. So like I was saying, these tires have siping, and that's what these little cuts in the tread pattern are. This is siping, and I guess maybe you could say that these big grooves are a form of siping, but I'm not quite sure if there's a different technical term for them. But this is really important for helping your tire perform better in wet and snowy conditions. And what I read about online is essentially these help your blocks to cool, but they also help to push snow or rain into these little cracks, and that allows this portion, the exterior-most portion of the tread block, to contact the ground. Because if it's just flat, then it might just pancake the snow, and then you have a thin layer of snow over this whole thing and it slides. But with this setup, it will push some of the snow into these cracks and then allow the rubber to actually contact the ground. And then in theory, I think all of these different cracks are designed to shed that snow when it's not in contact with the ground. Now, in contrast, the mud terrains, you can see there is this one big slit, which is going to help. And this is some siping, and this is why Geolandars are considered to be pretty good snow tires, or I guess tires for wet conditions, before being a mud tire. Most people would say that mud tires are terrible, and I think that's because a lot of mud tires don't even have this one piece of siping. Now, another reason this is a mud tire is you can see the gaps between each lug are much larger, and this allows big chunks of mud to pack in between here and your tire to push through mud so that these big blocks can contact something that you're going to get grip on. So that's kind of the difference between an all-terrain and a mud terrain, and that's why these I figured would be halfway decent in the snow. So to kind of talk about why I think these are still decent winter tires, but why I'm ultimately wanting to try out the Wildpeaks just to compare, these tires tend to perform really well, what I've found, in super powdery snow or sticky snow, but sticky snow that hasn't been packed down. So basically whenever snow is kind of acting more like mud or sand, because in a way these tires can act a little bit like a paddle tire where you get large chunks of snow into these sections and then it gets really good grip by just gripping against the snow. But these don't tend to do quite as well on like the super thin layers of snow, really hard packed snow, or that, if you get like that sand
and snow mixture that's like a 1/4 inch thick and gets really slippery. These didn't tend to do incredibly well against those. Now, if I just drove slow, it was not like it was ever unsafe or anything. If I didn't have the option to switch to my Falken WildPeaks that I have now, I think these would still be completely fine. But in the last week or so of driving with these tires, we've gotten a decent amount of snow here in Minnesota, and I've really liked how these performed. The Load C wall is definitely squishier, and it's more comfortable driving on the road. And these are definitely a little bit better in some of those more greasy road conditions. So I'm excited to continue to test these out. I think they're gonna be a sweet tire, and to be completely honest, I do a lot more snow road driving than I do on mud, and so these might be just a better fit if they'll also perform well off-road, which from what I've read, they do great on off-road as well, as far as being, just an all-terrain tire. So I'm excited to continue to test them out. And the reason I wanted to test these out is I wanted to be able to compare the Geolandars to the Falken WildPeaks and to the KO2s, because I don't plan on running a 285/70 R17 tire forever. I'd like to get larger tires than this, and so being able to sample a bunch of tires to give some feedback to all of you, as well as know what exact tire I want to buy when I go a little larger, is just going to be super helpful. So I told you all about this, but I finally got some protection rings. So I'm going to walk you through how to install these. Just a little, I guess, follow-up to how I'm liking these rims. The rims are great. I think they have a super awesome look, and honestly, they've been fantastic. Like, no problems with them. I get lots of compliments on them, and I think they look really sharp. And I'm really excited to put this protection ring on, because it's going to make the rim look a little more blacked out, which I kind of like, and provide a little more contrast against the tires, which can over time just get kind of ugly. So these protection rings are super sweet. They're $80 for the steel version. That's powder coated, and I bought 5 of them because someday I'm gonna have a full-size spare, so I just figured I'd buy 5, and we're gonna be putting these on. So what you do is, it comes with this huge pack of screws. These screws have a 1/2 head on them, and they're supposed to be torqued to 5 to 7 foot-pounds. Most torque wrenches I don't think go that low, or they probably go just down that low. So you might have to do an inch-pound torque wrench, but I'm gonna try and just snug them, not too tight, and then I'm gonna check them with a torque wrench after that. So they also recommend that you use some anti-seize just so that these don't rust or corrode into place. But this is going to take a little bit to put all these in, but I think it's going to look really awesome afterward. So let's get into it. So what I am going to do is I'm going to put one in without anti-seize at the very top, and then I'm going to start from the bottom. And this is just so that I can hold the ring in place. I'll take this one out later, but I would also recommend just doing this earlier on, because these threads over time probably will rust or corrode. So it's better to get bolts and a protection ring in there sooner rather than later. Another thing I will mention is I bought locking lug nuts from Relations Race Wheels, and they've been rusting incredibly quickly, and some of them didn't even fit right off the bat. So I wouldn't recommend buying their lug nuts, but that's pretty much a small thing. They probably just source them from someplace. I doubt they make them in-house. And so just buy lug nuts elsewhere, but their rims are great, and these protection rings are gonna look awesome. So now all we gotta do is grab a bunch of these screws and start putting a little bit of anti-seize on them. And with anti-seize, less is more, so I'm gonna I think I put too much on this bolt, so let's back up here and rub some of that on a different one. I'm glad I'm doing this now. I'm a little afraid that if I had waited too long, these wouldn't go on nicely, because there's dirt and grime and whatnot inside the threads, and you want to get all this going before those threads deteriorate. A lot of the threads on my vehicle are actually in pretty rough shape because we get different salt and sand and all kinds of stuff here in Minnesota, and stuff just over time really deteriorates here. So I'm glad we're getting these on sooner rather than later. And as far as I understand, with this stuff, it kind of spreads out over the threads as you put it on, so don't feel like you need to paint it on perfectly, because it's gonna spread out. So I also earlier today tried to tiptoe to and from the car wash because I wanted to rinse out the rims as best I could of salt, and that was pretty challenging. So if you think the car looks nice and clean, you know, I do this for you guys. I had to go get a car wash just for the video, so, but I like a clean car, that's for sure. All right, so now that we got those in, I'm gonna take this bolt out just to make sure I don't accidentally put that in tight. Another tip is, if you haven't noticed, I'm wearing snow pants, and it's honestly not that bad working outside in winter clothes, as long as it's not too cold out to where your hands don't get too cold. But I'm doing all right so far, so this shouldn't be too bad. So some of these have been going in a little bit hard, and it's just because when you're finger tightening, I guess some of these threads aren't maybe perfect. So just use a wrench when you're finger tightening, and everything's been going in just fine for me. I thought maybe that there was like pieces of sand or dirt stuck in the threads, but once I just used my socket wrench, it worked just fine. So I'm not too worried now. I was a little worried that I was gonna have problems putting these in. Also, I haven't really been tightening these down all the way. I've been putting them in, and then I just leave a little bit of wiggle room because the ring isn't like perfectly fit, you know, there's a little bit of play. So I'm waiting to tighten everything down until all the bolts are threaded through and in. Well, there you have it. That's how you install the protection rings on the Relation Race Wheels RR6-H. These are the hybrid beadlock rims or wheels. And I think they look really sharp. I like the little bit more aggressive look. I also really like the black on black screws and ring on top of the matte dark bronze. I think it looks really sharp, and it's a nice little contrast to the all blacked out vehicle. So comment down below if you like that setup, or if you think you know, it would have looked better with the brass or kind of goldish looking screws. So with that being said, I hope that this review of the protection rings and just talking about Falken WildPeaks versus the Geolander MTs was helpful for you. I think that the Geolander MTs are probably the best mud terrain tire you can go for if you're trying to find something kind of like an all-terrain. And I'm really excited to try these out and just be able to kind of explain my thoughts compared to these and some different types of tires that I've tried in the past. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate the support from all of you. 2022 is going to be an awesome year. And with that being said, I'll catch you all in the next video.